here at the front of the cathedral. And you noticed how these balconies, this one 2 stories high, are a rich cultural architectural element. Even shooting down a side street from the square, you see a couple of more designs. The people who work here seem to be industrious. This lady singing to herself as she sweeps the street. This cathedral is the flagship of Peruvian churches or cathedrals. And they charge $10 soles, which is about $3.50 to get in. Most churches do not, but that may account for the fact that this church seems very well maintained. I've videoed many Stations of the Cross depictions, and this is perhaps one of the most elaborate in this church. Interesting, the light design of these chandeliers or candelabras, counterpointed against the massiveness of these roof supporting pillars. And there's nothing elegant about them. They were designed to be massive. The organ pipes, and the irony that that bit of stained glass should forever be almost hidden. The huge, gated, enclosed structures almost make these seem like mini churches. Another art form, stand-alone. Don't know what you call this, half sculpture, half painting. There are 2 huge paintings that presumably are so covered with the grime of time that they're almost indiscernible, perhaps waiting for the motivation to restore them or clean them. And here I'm in what I guess is called the catacombs for important people to this church, who are presumably buried or interred behind those plaques. It was in London that I was in a similar place. The Church of All Saints, I believe. And here the interred remains of others not quite so important. And more. Notice the small size of the skulls. It is an irony that for these people there could be no greater tribute to themselves than to be interred within the confines of this church. In other words, their remains were important to them. Whereas to me, I really don't care what happens to my remains. This is a large and unique piece of furniture. This is an early prosthesis that Don Melchor wore after he lost his arm in a battle. These paintings in this room depict the various signs of astrology. For example, that is Capricorn. What's interesting about these is they depict facets of the way of life during the time. These were painted in the 17th century sometime. Notice boitard, or however you pronounce that, but butchering of animals. The one below, the tree cutters. This looks like the hunt, but it almost looks like it's a man that was the prey. The man you hear singing in the background is apparently a janitor with a superb voice. This looks like the wealthy on a picnic, and above it perhaps the common folk doing the same. A man shearing sheep, a wagon bringing in the wheat stalks for this building's roof. And that guy is good. A room filled with the artifacts of power. It could be nice as religious faith, as though that were a good thing. But I'm unable to do that. The effort to create that. From tape 9 to 10. God, that guy has a beautiful voice. Once in a while you'll hear the pails, metal pails banging around as he does his work. Look at the minuscule detail of this portable display. The bottom there folds up to form the side, and the top closes down. This apparently is a depiction of the birth of Christ. Certainly if you put away the religious connotations to all of this. The works themselves must be considered outstanding art of some form. I remember in Costa Rica when I visited some of Marcela's family, 2 aunts in particular, most houses had something like this, perhaps not as elaborate, and maybe only for the Christmas season. This reminds me of the convent that I visited in San Angel, Mexico, in what was called the refectory. This is called a bargueño, and those, what I guess are little drawers, are with ivory inlay. A very frank depiction. Presumably a mock-up of some kind of gathering place of the holies of holies. If those kind of seats are not self-aggrandizement, I don't care what the context, I simply don't know what that word means. I think this is a depiction of the final judgment, with God, Christ, whatever, sitting on his throne. Notice the cut in his right side, while the masses of humanity beneath rejoice, applaud, inveigle, do whatever is necessary to try to get into heaven. And this one depicting a very vengeful God with a sword in his left hand, and bewildered, frightened people. And notice the individual off to the right with a tail illuminated in the flames behind him. And then on the left corner, of course, people being cast into the pits of hell. Where do you get to stand in a museum in the middle of one of the great churches in the world, probably, and listen to a janitor sing one of the most iconic songs of the Christian religion? Now, if you look closely at these columns, you may be able to notice the bulge in the center. This is the Greek device for making columns look like they're perfectly straight up and down. Same thing was done with horizontal surfaces. They would bulge upward so that at a distance they had the appearance of being flat. This is probably the oldest artifact in Plaza de Armas. The presidential palace. Whether this architecture is new or not, I don't know. I'm at the town hall for all, and this is just a small example of they're illustrating some of the changes that they've made. And that Park de Mural that I was in, Murale, is a good indicator of that too. A little diorama of a large pedestrian walk across the freeway and the river system. I'm just guessing that this large rock, particularly when seen from the right rather than where I'm photographing now, is an allusion to the peak at Machu Picchu because it has that kind of look to it. Not this view, but the view from the other side. What I'm focusing on here is the post office. And notice it says Casa de Correos y Telegrafos, back in the days when the telegraph. And this is an interesting tree because it appears to have two different colored flowers on it. Whether they represent the same flower in different stages or what, I don't know. Another church just to the left of the governor's palace.